And we're back, Stripe Show podcast. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Hope you're having a wonderful summer as we almost turn the corner to August 1st, coming at you from Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, where it is supposed to be 98 degrees here today, folks. When you go high 90s in Florida, you better buckle up because it's going to be hot and the humidity is up. But I'm sitting in my studio. It's 72 degrees, and I'm joined by a guy that got up early today out there on the West Coast. Love the West Coast. Just came back in Cali, Moore Park, California. He works at the Golf Development Center. You know him as James Jordan. James, this is a long time overdue, man. Thanks for joining the pod.
Thanks for having me, Travis. What an honor and a privilege. Glad to be on the show.
Well, I know you're busy. It's summertime, and I know you develop a ton of kids. I watch you there on your Instagram at James Jordan Golf. And you shared a couple swings with me. We'll get to them in a second. But I think it'd be fun today with the pod to kind of get started with the conversation around junior development. I mean, the game is cranking right now. I mean, rounds are up. I see kids in the studio. I see kids out there on the golf course. I'm sure you do as well. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. Has golf, in your mind, ever been bigger out there in California, particularly in the junior space?
I think right now it's at the biggest peak we've ever seen, to be honest, Travis. It's interesting because, we had this time in COVID where so many people got into golf, but a lot of the inspiration came from these juniors. When I have a lot of amateurs that are really excited about golf, they're always looking at the junior swings like, I can do that. I can do what they do. And juniors are just playing so much golf these days. They're so excited about it. There's so much going on in the golf world, but junior golf in California is right where it's at in Florida. We probably have the biggest boat of players playing AJGA, playing Southern California Golf, playing Toyota Cup, all the tours out here as well as you guys have in Florida. So it's exciting, man. I've never seen a wave of players like this at the junior rate in my career.
It's interesting. I taught outside for, 20 plus years and just did a deal here in Jacksonville with a great facility called Deerwood Country Club. And, I have the studio here in Ponte Vedra. We're building one downtown that opens in September. And then to be able to have the two studios interact with Deerwood is going to be awesome because, I miss obviously getting out there on the grass in the short game area and getting on the course and those things, because we know that's super important in the world of development. But what's been really interesting, James, in opening this indoor facility 2.5 years ago is it's opened my eyes to a whole nother, I think, I don't want to say market, but a whole nother group of kids that come in here and want to try golf.
Right.
And they want to kind of see what it's all about. Their parents, of course, they want them to be associated with the game. They know it's a sport of a lifetime. They know that it teaches them so many things. And so although these maybe are not kids right out of the gate that are ready to go play competitive golf, they have an interest. And the studio, controlled setting, it's not 1,000 degrees out. They're not running around with kids who are playing competitive golf. You can see that they have a great time. The simulation, of course, with the simulator, the games, the contest, they're all kind of in the same group. The community aspect. It's been awesome to see these kids just maybe getting started, stay with it after school in camps. And now so many of them are ready to kind of transfer to the course and start to play. It's been really cool.
That's very cool. I love that. I mean, I think with simulators now and how so many people are building these arenas into golfers being able to be introduced to the game, it's pretty cool because, it's not so hot out in the summer. If it's a rainy day, you can get them in there. And I think it's cool too, because with simulators, you can play different games. You can see ball lines now, you can see shapes, you can have a variety of options, right, to get the kids engaged and to get them started. And it's just getting bigger and better with technology, which is cool. I love that you have that opportunity there. And I'm looking forward in the future, too, to have an indoor facility, because I think having both sides of the world, outdoor and indoor, it benefits the golfer. Like, we're trying to grow the game at the end of the day. That's the most important thing.
Yep. How do you look at junior development? I mean, kid, comes to you, you work with a lot of competitive players. I mean, how do you approach it with families and kids that are coming to you? Like, hey, I want to get better at this game. I'm 9, 10, 11 years old. How do you approach just the whole junior sector in general?
That's a great question, Travis. When I get a child that's kind of already into golf with their family, and they come to me and they want to get better and understand more, I usually sit back for a good 20, 30 minutes in that first meetup, and I get a clear understanding of what they know about the game already. What are your strengths? Let's talk about that first. I don't like to get into too many negatives. What's the good parts of your game? Do you find yourself really good with the putting? Do you find yourself good around the greens? Are you hitting the ball the way you like it? Do you feel really confident with the driver? And then once I can grasp an understanding, because at the end of the day, I'm the student in the beginning. I have to understand where they're at. Therefore, I can train them and teach them after I know them. So I always ask them in the beginning, like, who's taking the lesson here? And they're like, me? I'm like, no, me. I'm taking the lesson right here, right now.
Mhm.
But as you educate me, young man or young girl, like you give me the opportunity to grow your game. So then it's really an understanding of what they want to do, what they'd like to accomplish. Do they want to get stronger as a 12-year-old and work out a little bit more? Do they want to hit a draw? Do they want to hit a cut? Do they want to hit the ball further? Do they want to touch up on their short game? And then I get the parents engaged too. And that's really important that you ask that, because I used to be a little bit defiant on, like, don't have the parents overcoach the kid, but I think the opportunity there is make the parents better at understanding where to help them. Get on the same page as a team with compassion, and that way we can all work together and grow this young man or young woman's game.
Mm.
So it's really a research project in that first lesson. I'd say the first two lessons. And then we can start working on motion patterns and swing specifics and understanding ball lines and shapes and how to
Mm.
encourage more speed. So it's a fun process. I think I love coaching junior golf for that long-term growth development phase, because it's just a journey. It's I don't
Yeah.
get caught up in the results. I don't want to hear about the scores yet. Let's focus on right here, right now. The process will get you to the results. As Scottie Scheffler just talked in that interview, I'm really focused on the process, the grind,
Mhm.
because the results will come if you focus on the now. So that's what's cool about junior golf is that long-term journey. I like it.
And there's a there's a window there, right, with kids as they get a certain age, boys and girls, where you can really coach them up, and you can really make a difference on some technique, building skill set, full swing, short game, putting. And I think the adage of, like, hey, you start young, you benefit from that later on. There's no doubt. I think that's the case primarily with probably anything that you do, but particularly in golf. I mean, these kids that they don't have to love it, but they come in here and they just kind of slowly start putting the pieces together. Pretty soon their swing evolves into something their parents are looking at like, oh wow. I mean, that was really cool. That
Right.
that little Johnny just hit his driver like that. His putting's getting better. He can hit a little low bump and run now. He can hit a little greenside pitch. And even though that they don't fall in love with it right away, it's okay. Like, they continue to have a great experience around the sport. And then maybe one day that fire gets lit, because there's a lot of late bloomers in golf, and
Mhm.
it's a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. So even though you may not be competitive high school, college, I guess the point I'm making is parents keeping them kind of associated with golf, great experiences, whether indoor or out. Man, you can play it till you're 80 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the opposite of isolation is connection. And this game allows them
Yeah.
to connect.
Mm.
I love the variations of creativity that you see these kids get ingrained into, learning different shots, and then it clicks, and then their parents see it, as you mentioned, which is really
Mhm.
cool. I find that to be divine when a kid learns a new shot, and then they have this cocksureness, this confidence about them now, and they're like, oh, I'm learning more pieces of the game. And that's the cool part, is like, and
Yeah.
yes, to your acknowledgement of saying, this is a lifelong journey, right? It always started with me and my dad, who played professional golf on the mini tours years back, Hogan Tour, before the Corn Ferry.
Yep.
And it was really interesting because, I always find people like, I want to be great at the game and I want to play professionally. Well, let's start with just enjoying the connection of it. Let's enjoy learning shots. And then in the long run, I have guys I coached 10 years ago from middle school that are financial advisors, that are +2, +3 golfers, taking
Right.
money off their boys now. And they're like, you know what,
Yeah.
JJ, I'm good with that. I'm clocking money, I'm making good money, but I'm also taking money off my guys as a +2 handicap or a scratch golfer. So, like, at the end of the day, I just want to make players better and really good at this game so they can play with their family or their friends or their business associates. It's going to be really hard to always make it on the tour, but if you got a great game moving forward in your business, you're going to have a fun life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell us about this young man. You sent me this video. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, Joseph Wong. He's
Wow.
become quite the player. Yeah. he came to me in 10th grade with his dad, Mike, and his mom, great family. His brother, David, played some Division I golf too. Um, and he's really blossomed in the last year, and if we're just talking about the golf swing, Travis, it was your typical, the arms lifting up, not a lot of rotation, shut face, pulling down across the line, pulls. So that first lesson was just, let's make you understand a clear understanding of the golf swing and what was
Mhm.
happening, the pulls. So when we fixed some of those technicalities and how the functionality of it was, I got him hitting push draws within 2 lessons. And then it just became like a variety of different shot shaping. And where's your mind at? What do you see? Like, what are your intentions here? And like really creating an environment of golf for him.
Mm.
And at points in, I'd say year 2, there were certain lessons where it started to be ball lines, how he looked at things, how he saw things. A lot of times I'd reassure him, that's your starting line. The club face is pointed there. Like, well, I'm pulling it. I'm like, just hit it straight at, and you hit the pin. What are you talking about pulling it? So, that realm of golf where we think we're not doing what we need to be doing, but he was, and I had to reassure him, he started playing phenomenal golf because I
Mhm.
kind of ensured trust in what he was doing with his ball lines. We work on heights and wedge games, and I'm a big fan of getting my guys wedges from 100 yards and really, really good.
Mm.
And this last year, shooting 66, 67, getting pretty far in CIFs, played his first USGA event, US Open qualifier. He's got a D1 scholarship at Hofstra now.
Nice.
I think a lot of colleges would take him though now because he peaked the last 6 months, and he's just a really, really humble, good human being that I'm excited
Mhm.
for his future.
It's always a journey. When I go back to my TPC Sawgrass days and when we were running the PGA Tour academies and had a lot of there for many years, that's all I did was just develop these young kids like this. And it was always a challenge of like, you want to coach them up when it's appropriate, but you don't want to get it too technical. There
Right.
was the time that, TrackMan came in. I can remember when we got our first TrackMan and, you know, these kids wanting to know the numbers and then hit a shot and then look at the number. And it became more about what the number was or maybe what the swing looked like rather than hitting a shot and making a score. So it's always a balance of, not to overcoach it, right? And that's the hard part. And I got some kids now that are really climbing and doing well, and you want to pick those moments to step in and say, hey, here's what we're going to do with the technique. And then you want to pick those moments where it's like, you know what? Let's see if we can get a little more self-discovery here and see
Right.
if you can correct it yourself, because technology is great, but it's really easy and you can get dependent on just sending video always to your coach where the coach always has to fix it, right?
Right.
And so do you struggle with that too? How do you balance that internally?
Fantastic question and scenario that as
Mhm.
coaches that have been around a little while now that we deal with, right?
Mhm.
To separate their mind from thinking it's their swing versus what are your intentions is one of the biggest things that we have to address when we're coaching these kids, right? Because they will think something in their swing looks off and not even focus on what the ball did based on a feel, right? So I'm always investigating the feel versus the reality, what are the numbers saying? Well, sometimes getting away from the machine a little bit and understanding like, okay, what does my swing need to look like to hit this draw? How about you just show me what a draw would look like based on your own intentions? And why don't you hit 5 of those? And then let me record what your swing does when you try to produce that so we have some data back on what you do intuitively to prove that that might be the way to do it.
Mhm.
So I have to explore and stay open to those options. And I try to minimize overcorrecting things that don't need to be corrected. But then I'll step in when I say, well, the wrist condition's working a certain way, the face is working that way. So let's fix that because you
Sure.
can't go against the science there. So there
Right.
are certain parts where the geometry has to match up. But I also want them to give themselves credit for being intuitive in their own internal cues and then just playing external golf, thinking about ball lines, heights, apex, direction, shapes. What are the slopes doing? What are the grasses? I have a thing now where I tell players go out and create every scenario that's difficult for you, uphill lie, side hill lie, ball below your feet, and I'll address it, but you got to write those in notes, send me swings from those lie angles, and then we'll address it and focus it on the range because it's so important that I know how to adapt in their environment on the course.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said. That's a big one, and there's a lot of teachers that
Right.
listen to this,
Right.
and that's a balance. And And look, you're gonna handle those situations as a teacher the right way, and then sometimes you might look back in hindsight and be like, you know what, maybe I should have handled that a little bit differently. I mean, those
Right.
those that's just part of it. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, and but yeah, I think managing that aspect, what you just discussed there, in juniors and the technicalities versus the being a little more instinctive and an athlete. That's different for every kid, and you get better at it as you go. Here's another one that another
Vince.
young man.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this.
Just out of eighth grade. He's been a divine player to work with the last 6 months. The biggest thing I'm working on with him right now is eating a lot of protein and fat to build him up size wise. And he loves that. He sends me pictures of him feasting over Brazilian barbecue, which is just the highlight of my day. No, but honestly, yeah, we've worked on some pieces of the. It's fun with this kid. He's
Yeah.
just a really good human being, Travis. I've been
Hmm.
attracting these new students that are just. I think you get to a place with time in this business that you get the players that are meant for you, and that just comes with just growth. And I
Hmm.
love everyone in this game, but I focus on this kid primarily because he has the passion. He wants to play professionally, but we focus on just good golf now, get to college, see where it goes. I want him focused on his education to the best of his ability in all areas of his life. But right now with his swing, he was a typical kid that, these kids in junior golf, and I think I should elaborate on this because you asked, it's like, what's a big commonality we see? And Tiger talked about in 2000, with Butch in that segment in Golf Channel, trying to get his arms more connected in front of his body so he could work together and sync. Is their leg work, right? They're so flexible. This kid had the back of his right shoulder so retracted, moving back in the downswing that the club would just dump under and he'd get it so stuck that it was just blocks out to the right, flip left saves, right? So how I changed it with the setup to the takeaway to the top and making him understanding, like, most players are getting the club to pitch on an arc, the shaft at some point. They're zeroing out that shaft to impact right around parallel to the ground to impact and after the ball, regardless if they're across the line laid off. And we worked on some of those technicalities along with strength and speed. And I encouraged them to kind of isolate the lower body a little bit to understand how the upper body can sync up more because they all have radical legs, primarily
Yeah.
because they grew up with smaller torsos and they're not so big in their, pectoral region and their chest and torso, and they have stronger legs, and it's interesting because a lot of golfers have longer limbs too. They have longer arms, they have longer legs. They're like athletes and they have these short torsos. So when I can engage that upper part more, they can sync up the shaft, they can get a little bit more aligned at impact, and they can just have more success on their starting line. So trying to clean up that leg work was important.
It's amazing. I think about this often. I go back to when I was young, and even getting into teaching for the first time in like 1998, 99.
Yeah.
And you think about how golf was taught then versus now, and you look at these young players that you have. The first thing that comes to mind is the club face. Right there, like the toe halfway back, the toes more down,
Right.
the club face at the top. You can see some of the club face from the target line where I think back in the 90s, early 2000, there was a little more face rotation, like the toe is a little more up halfway back, a little more toe hang at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even the lower body, as you mentioned, like you can see in these swings, you can see that window open up right there between the knees and the backswing. So there's this change of knee flex. There's this more active, I should say, lower body hip turning where late 90s it was turn the upper, not so much the lower, and keep the right knee flexed. And there's these examples. And I'm not saying what was taught then was wrong. I'm just saying it was different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so you look at these young men and women now, and I think they hit it so much further. We know that, and we know technology is part of that. But they come out, these kids, and I think Victor Hovland's era, certainly part of that. And we're seeing these young guys more and more and more that they come out, they hit it long, and they hit it pretty darn straight. And yes, they're better athletes and the training is there. But I just think from a technique standpoint and the way they were taught at a young age is just better. It's just better than it was back in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, I would agree so much so on that, Travis. And I would tell you too, sometimes it's important to look back in the 70s and 80s, when we're looking at, a Seve or a Paul Azinger or Nick Faldo, and some of those golf swings to understand that we can use some of that old data and old footage with the new stuff too, if we're trying to go a different direction. There may be times, and you specified really clearly on, more hip depth, bigger turn back, bigger pivot,
Hmm.
right? And it generally happens with juniors because we want that speed factor. Confidence
Sure.
is everything. Momentum and confidence are probably the two most important things in a young kid's game, honestly. And then ball lines and being a little creative and technical comes later with their expansion of their intelligence as they age. But it's important to understand, like, for a kid like that who may turn too much and the legs get too radical, I might want to isolate that right knee a little bit, just
Sure.
as a
Yeah.
training pattern, right? These are
Yep.
feels to create medium realities so that the viewers out there know. And I love them. But it's
Yep.
important to take a look at everything. I think we stay open minded. But yeah, to your point, the kids are getting the face a little bit more static these days. They're working on face control. They're getting smarter with 100-yard in wedges and understanding how to control flights. And it's
Hmm.
happening at a younger age because a lot of us started teaching younger with younger kids. And that was my forte for 10 years. I was coaching 100 kids a month. I was literally being told by their coaches, how do you even breathe? And now I've trimmed the fat a little bit so I can focus on individual kids. But that realm of just kids, it was speed, PVC pipes. How are we generating speed? How are we generating face control? How are we getting your body to move? And going out on the course and just doing so much with so many kids. I mean, there's so many junior golfers these days. It's incredible.
Hmm. Hey, you made a
Really
good
fun.
point there. Like two of the most important things for junior golf, you got, confidence and speed, right? Keeping the
Right.
confidence up um,
Right.
for the player. And confidence can get rattled in this game no matter what your age is, no matter what your age is. And oftentimes, with kids when they struggle and then they start sending video, right? Because it's going to happen. It's just like you're going to have moments where you're not hitting it good. I'm sorry. Like that's just golf and we're all human
Let's
beings
go.
here.
Right.
And so those are really the moments where it's okay. How do we coach this up to get the kid back on track? Is this a time for him to, you know, learn himself how to fix maybe what the issue is, or is this a time that I need to step in and clean it up and allow him to understand to get the confidence back up? But failure is inevitable in this game. How do you approach it with your young junior golfers, when it comes about, when maybe the confidence is starting to slip and you're like, hey, let me step in here and help you understand what's happening.
100%. That is so important when they're in that mindset of a downfall and they're
Yeah.
struggling with either their swing or their scoring. The first thing I have to do is I have to grow them into accountability. They have to tell me and be very aware of what they're going through, right? On the golf course or on the range. What are your practice habits like? Are you working on ball lines? Are you working on speed? Are you just trying to hit it straight all day and getting frustrated with that? What's going on in the course? What are the stats? You tell me
Mhm.
your putter's saving you and your short game's great. I'll go out and watch you. So I'll go out and watch them. Then I'll find out that they have a few chip shots around the greens that they leave 10 feet short or 10 feet past. So I'm like, is it really that good? We need to be honest here.
Sure.
Vulnerable and rigorous honesty is so important for me to understand where they're at, right? And then my job to step in really comes from a place of just compassion, reassuring them that what you're doing is going to work. Let's focus on these two or three areas now, one swing at a time, one shot at a time. Let's get impact really good for you. Hit the middle of the face, start working ball lines, start getting you conditioned. A lot of times I'll work on full turn, half speed swings. I find that coordination to be so
Mm,
important where they're turning full, but they're working on a speed that makes the brain and body agree
mm.
because they're so hopped up in their mind and being negative about the outcome or this
Yep.
expectation, right? Oh, I need to shoot this score. I need to hit it better. Well, let's slow it down so your body and brain can understand what we're doing, right? And I tell these kids, Travis, no expectations. An expectation is a resentment under construction. Be easy on yourself because we need to be at peace. We need to go slow with this. And I just have to I find it to be this language of just reassuring them. It's one of the languages I try to use. I try to speak really kind to them and make them gentle with their process because they're already hypersensitive to it. So it's something I'm working on a lot right now is that holistic approach and then focusing on the technicalities or the ball lines, the patterns, and they have to give me that feedback too. So I make them take notes and be accountable for that. That's important because I have to understand.
It's good stuff because it's managing the good and the bad and
Right.
that journey and how it's going to transpire because it's going to happen with this sport and it never ends. You know, I mean, all you gotta do is turn the TV on and you see the best players in the world, you know, somehow because you know you've watched them play and they shoot 77, which is like, you know, you and I are shooting 90, you know, kind of thing. So um yeah, good stuff. Junior golf, it's it is really thriving. I think the indoor outdoor blend, it's in a great spot
Yeah.
to attract kids who are maybe just wanting to get into the game for the first time, have a little bit of maybe fear of getting in. There's opportunities for them, and then of course that growth pattern, which then takes you outdoors and learning what's happening out there and playing competitive golf and just following that journey as you may see it to where, look, I want to play I want to play high school golf now, I want to play college golf now, or I don't, and I'm a late bloomer and I'm going to play golf the rest of my life, and that's okay too. And I think that's the beauty of the sport, and we're in a great spot across the country from Cali to Florida. All right, let's transition here.
Yep.
Let's transition here. I'm looking through some of these videos and there's a lot I want to get to, but I want to go to Kitayama. He just won.
Yeah.
Kitayama, is he from California? I think he is. Kurt.
I don't.
I
I
don't.
believe so. It's interesting because I have been close with people who have worked on the bag for him, Brian Martin and some guys that know him
Yeah.
well. I'm pretty sure. I never knew Kurt that
Mm.
well, but great guy from people I know.
Yeah.
I've coached friends of his, and really good guy.
He 2 wins now. And really, you know, he won in Orlando, Arnold Palmer. And
Right.
the next day, his caddy Tim Tucker, who's a friend of mine, came in. He was here in the studio, and we were chatting because he
Sure.
helped Kitayama. He's not in the back any longer, but
Right.
Kitayama worked with Chris Como. I was texting with him last night. I'll show you a couple videos here in a second on some of the changes, but I was zooming in on his grip, and it's funny, like in junior golf and just in adult instruction, I find the putting grip to be one of the most butchered components in golf. Like,
Right.
you know, it's funny, like, hey, just putt whatever feels normal to you.
Right.
But I think in putting, when you really look at it, I mean, I know there's some outliers, but I think it's where the guys look the most the same than any other part of the game. And here's a good close up of Kitayama's grip. Look at that right hand there.
Right.
That's a pretty, you know, that right hand's a fair amount under, but I find, James, one thing that I see a lot with kids and adults, I see a lot of that right hand with the putting grip really on top, and the right
Right.
forearm gets super tall, and the right forearm is much higher than the left. So I'll show this picture to people, and I'll say, look at that right hand right there. See how it's kind of underneath and on that knuckle
Mhm.
of the left?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, and when they do that, and then they get their thumbs to kind of match up, and that right forearm's a touch softer, more times than not, that helps most people. And it's a grip that I will show a lot of junior golfers too when they're learning putting.
I love that piece actually because I've seen golfers, especially junior golfers, who get that right hand on top.
Mhm.
Then you can't see from a down the line standpoint that their shoulders are open. They're going to toggle the putter head back and have to reroute it. When you have the putter in the crevice of the palm pads, as you see there really well with Kurt, it
Mhm.
allows for a little bit more stability as you're swinging that putter head on the arc. And that's
Yeah,
so important to just create
sure.
stability on the momentum of the arc that the putter head's working on. So he has a very good grip. I mean, my putting grip was always the same as Steve Stricker's. You know, I had
Mm.
it in the crevice of my palm pads, and I did overlap. I didn't reverse overlap like the traditional guys did from Casper to Tiger to Nicholas. But I always found that I had stability that way. I wanted my hands
Mhm.
as close as possible to each other, not on top, not underneath, but being on the sides of the handle to have stability and control the putter head.
And you can see your wrists, like your wrists are almost like a little ulnar, like a little bit
Yeah,
unhinged.
totally
Y- y-
ulnar. Yeah,
yeah, which is another thing that tends to help where, you know, the again, junior, adult, whatever, they'll come in here and that right hand's so dominant,
yeah.
and the left wrist will, you know, will kind of push down in radial, right? And
Right,
so
right.
when you show them
Exactly.
how to get that right hand kind of a little more tucked underneath, and then the wrists unhinge a little, their elbows soft, like all these things start to kind of, you know, match up a little bit, and all of a sudden now you got a
100%.
little more stability in the face.
Stability.
Speaking of wrist angles, yeah. Speaking of wrist angles, here's really the major change Kitayama made. I was texting with Chris, and I remember when he was going through this change, when they were at the Players Championship, I was watching him hit, and Kitayama, and this I think is appropriate for the modern instruction, flexion in the left wrist, right? It is not for everybody, but for Kitayama, you can clearly see at the bottom, his left wrist is more in flexion, and he tries to get that left wrist in flexion like right away. I mean, going back to the point where I think they'd even let the club head get a little inside behind the hands early to get that lead wrist in flexion. And then from there, it's been a little easier for him to rotate and match up the path in the face. And statistically, his ball striking has improved and has been really good. How much is wrist angles a topic when you're developing juniors and adults for that matter?
We don't go over it too often, but when it does come up, I like to give them an understanding of how it affects the club face.
Mm-hmm.
And also the way the shaft pitches down on what we would say is a singular arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we were looking at Kurt over there, great player, I would have an understanding that he was probably hitting it a little high. His miss was a little bit too left to right. He'd have a variety of misses that he wanted to clean up. So when you see a guy get a little deeper with the club face is a little bit more shut and he can be more rotary, it brings the ball flight down. And tour guys are really trying to hit their short to mid irons a little lower than people think. Obviously, they hit their long irons and their driver, they can bomb it high and create a lot of leverage and height. But I would think that Kurt with Chris, and Chris does a great job with him, is trying to have a more boring flat flight that's predictable, right? The more in the air, the more spinny, the more it's harder to control. And wrist conditions can change the face. They can also change the way the shaft pitches down. And I just know for me personally that if you're a little cupped, you're a little flat, you're flexed, when it's moving down, I know from club parallel to the ground to impact, I want to make sure that the shaft is pitching similarly like every great swing I've ever seen in the history of golf. Like all those guys from position 6 to impact through impact are so similar. And some guys who cup it are going to have to reflex it on the way down. Some guys who are flex might even flatten it to be more neutralized. And some guys who are neutral are just a special kind I don't know about. I don't know how they do it perfectly and bring it down. God bless them. We all have our struggles and we have to work on changing our wrists in transition. But I love where Kurt's at. I think they probably brought the ball flight down and wanted more predictability in his launch angle, and spin rates.
I think the approach was geared around the driver initially. It was to get his driver better, and then I think it kind of stemmed from there. It's interesting because like that particular, I could pull up a lot of examples. I go back to, I go back to Tiger in his when he went from kind of Butch to Hank, and he kind of was a little bit vertical, and then Hank got him a little more, not laid off, but the shaft pointing a bit more, not so across the line. Left wrist looked a little different. Max Homa, I can remember when he started making some changes and worked with Mark Blackburn, you could see kind of a similar thing to Kitayama, the left wrist kind of flattening out, and Max kind of took off. There's a lot of examples, but then there's examples the other way, like Spieth, I think can get a little too flexed. And so he's trying to get his left wrist a little bit more extended, and so like there's examples on both sides. Right. And there's so when you get in, there's a lot of variations, and it's interesting because when you discuss it at a high level, the most talented players in the world, there's so many good things happening already that, if you go after the wrist angle, that can be a wholesale change, right? I mean, that can be a wholesale change for a player. So I give Kitayama a lot of credit and Chris in that, wow, they changed that wrist angle. The guy started driving it better, irons better. He gets his putter going at all. He's usually a factor that week, and he certainly got enough going here this last week. Another, now we switch and we go to this guy who can play a little bit of golf too, and Scottie Scheffler. And it's like, I mean, he's not exactly like flexed at the top, and his feet, You know, they're all over the place on the downswing, and he's damn near falling over, and he's the best player in the world. I mean, you look at that. You look at this swing. You look at this footwork. What do you think of with the number one player in the world?
Scotty has probably the best understanding of his hand path and what he wants to do at the club than anyone, along with a lot of confidence in his process. But the thing is that with Scotty, one thing I look at with players, I want to make this clear, is like before I even start with golf swing, I look at how long their arms are, how their clubs are fit to them. I mean, he's got long arms, he's got long
Mm-hmm.
levers. So that's why you're going to see when he pitches a shaft up and navigates to the top of the backswing, he's got a lot of height up there, right? He's got long arms. He's got a massive
Mm-hmm.
turn with long arms. So but I think the most fascinating part with him is the way he kicks his knees and pressure so far into his left heel. I have these Bodie Track and Swing Catalyst pressure reports from tour players, and I know where the pressure is at the top of the backswing and at the finish. And
Yeah.
I always felt like golfers have a lot of interference through impact for the hand path clearance, like their knees get in the way, right? Especially with junior golfers, they're kicking their tush closer to the target, closer to the ball, rather than getting out of the way. And I think Scotty, over the time with his coach and his own intuitive feels, has said, the more I push out of the way and get my knees and my pressure into my heels, I can have no interference for the hand path clearance. And he's so
Mm-hmm.
free through the impact position, and that's where the magic of the momentum is. People always say, well, impact's everything. Well, yeah, a few things getting to impact are important too, but he understands how to get out of the way to create freedom through impact. And there's nothing more confident when you feel free through the hitting zone. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah. Pushing back, getting out of the way. I think that's really good. And I think for kids, creating that space, getting to a spot where you can create some of that space to happen, because you look at Scotty here, this was him AJGA, and when he was
Junior golf.
a teenager, I mean, you can kind of see the same thing right there. I mean, he's kind of pushing back, getting out of the way. Now, I've talked about this before. I mean, Scotty's definitely, when you look at that right there, he's definitely got the club more on front. His left arm's more upright. His right elbow's not retracted as much. I mean, he's cleaned up, some of those things. But as far as his footwork, I mean, that looks like Scottie Scheffler right there. Those feet,
Yeah,
and the way he's
100%.
moving out of the way. So
And
Randy
that's a good
Smith,
thing to right.
Yeah,
And that's a great thing to work on with players, Travis, is making them understand, there's a time and place where you want to isolate the lower body a little bit. And there's a time and place where you want to, push out of the way to create clearance. I work on
Yeah.
both avenues with players to see what's comfortable for them. And I might work on one avenue with them if I'm trying to exaggerate the opposite of what they're not doing enough, because I tell you, like with junior golfers, their leg work's so radical in the wrong direction, they're jumping up out of their pressure. Junior golfers stand up out of the golf shot, 99% of them, when they're learning golf, and they're good players. So I want to be able to control their lower body a little bit quieter. And then the second part is then I engage in their core, their chest, their body working together and getting their leg work really, really complemented with their upper body work.
All right, I'm gonna come back here. I got a video that I stole off your Instagram that I'm going to play, and I'm going to get your thoughts on it. We're going to finish up with that. Before we get to that, little word from one of my sponsors. If you're like most golfers, you blame yourself when you miss a short putt. So after you hold back the urge to throw your putter in the lake, don't do that. You try to fix your putting stroke. But how long does that last? 1 week, 1 round, 1 hole? There's a company called Lab Golf that doesn't think you should be blaming yourself. That's because all putters have this thing called torque, which means the putter face is trying to twist during the stroke, so you grip it like a snake. What Lab Golf did is they figured out how to make putters with no torque. They call it lie angle balance, and you have to feel it to believe it. I did. The Lab Golf putter, you don't have to use a funny putting grip to try to keep the face square. You can putt it any way you want because Lab Golf putter stays perfectly square by itself. It's effortless. To see how much easier putting can be, head over to labgolf.com. All right, before we get to that video, it's Shark Week. So, I mean, here we go. There's
some toe slide.
Well, Greg Norman, Shark Week. We like Greg again now that he's not part of Live, I guess. All right, he's fine now.
You know what? Greg is, I watched him as a kid, so it's a grind out there, and they're all trying to be the best golfer they can.
Yep.
I'm always trying to learn from everyone. I got no hatred in my heart for anybody.
No, I'm just kidding. Look, I mean, you can see. I mean, look at his feet. Though. I mean, it is. Look at that.
Yep.
I mean, that's Scottie
Master
Scheffler.
of the toe divot.
Yeah. Master of the toe divot. All right, buddy. So we're gonna finish up with this. All right, I got a video here because I know you got to get to the lesson too. I got a video here that I stole off your Instagram. I'm gonna play 56 seconds. So let's watch this video. Audience is gonna listen, watch, and then we'll come back and we'll. I'm gonna have you explain to me what's going on here.
And this isn't about getting the handle ahead. This is about unloading it more down. So you turn up down there. That's for down, right? And then we'll move it to forward. So we do one more where it's down. I don't want you from here. The objective is not to drag the handle here. It's time to flap it down. So it's big turn up, down first, right? People have this misconception and think these are for like holding shafting. You never want to hold it. Then we move it up here and we make a big, full, fast turn to the top. Then we release it a little bit, but it's going to be outside our left foot here. So I don't want the handle to drag. I want it to flap down. That puts the handle. If people don't understand, when you flap it down, pitch the shaft down, puts the handle, and then the handle's working on a 3D perspective around. They can't see that. They only see 2D. But then we flap it down, then we push it forward, right? So it's
Nice. Like that. The old trusty impact bag. Gary Wyron, been around forever.
Forever.
Take me through that. I love the impact zone videos. I love the get to that point of kind of training impact and what's happening through there. Maybe a little more shaft lean, because we know when that happens and a player takes out on for the first time, man, they hit some of the best shots they've ever hit.
You couldn't be more spot on with those sentiments. Vince, who is the 8th grader, who we saw his video earlier.
Okay.
When I did that work with him, and he specifically started to understand where that momentum starts and how you unload the shaft down and forward, no lie, along with eating a lot of protein, he is probably up between 7.5 to 9 yards with every club in 2 months.
Yeah.
Because he had no concept of how to create the speed in the right direction. You know, he would dump it back. So if I were to show you here why I work on it going down there is because force on flaps, right? So the force of the shaft is pitching down. It's also important for the impact bag for guys not to just drag it ahead. They want to pitch it down because the shaft goes down, the handle works left, and that's what appears for the handle to be ahead because it's working in a 3-dimensional perspective. But once they understand to take the force of their arms, the force of the shaft, and push it down hard against the heavy bag as much as they can against the impact bag, then I have them do that 10 times. And I tell them, hit a ball as hard as you can with the best balance possible, with your thought being right there, club shaft parallel to the ball, through the ball. And they literally hit the best shots of their life. It's a training routine that I do with all amateurs, all golfers, when they're ready, when, you know, the grip, the setup, the foundation's in order, and the top of the backswing feels comfortable. And I work on pitching it down, pitching it forward. If you were to tell me in 18 years, my favorite, most fascinating part of the swing, you know, whether it was Golfing Machine, Phil McLeano, Mac O'Grady, studying all these guys, P6 to P7.5 is a magic hour for golfers. It is a magical area for golfers to understand how to get it there to impact, through impact. And then it's all starting lines after that and ball direction lines once they get that speed and that momentum.
Yep, that's good stuff. Impact, I mean, it is the most important thing. We know that, but there are things to get organized and structured beforehand. And when you get to that point where you can start doing these kinds of drills, and all of a sudden, the player de-lofts the face a little bit for the first time versus adding loft, and they're like, whoa, like I only took a half to 3/4 swing, and that ball went longer than when I took a full swing.
100%. Yeah.
And that light comes on, and that confidence goes up. Yeah, that's a big moment in anyone's golfing career, in particularly a junior golfer, when that light comes on, for sure.
Yeah, and confidence, consistency, and momentum and speed are those factors for a junior golfer. And honestly, when I start doing it, like you said, you know, it's a light bulb moment for him. I actually look smart, and like I know what I'm doing, which is cool. So the ball's in my court. I look like I'm a genius. You know, I take a neurosurgeon and give him that, and he feels like a child. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, I'm pretty special here. No, but I, you know what it is as a coach. It's great to train something that really shows a result, because that's so hard for a golfer to see something that really gentles them to say, man, that felt great. And we want to just keep creating that environment every time, Travis.
It's linear at that point, right? Because they're like, when you do this, it's better. The strike's better. Sometimes when you're working on setup or backswing, like it's not always linear. You have to let it develop. You have to let the player kind of find their way. But when you get to that point of impact, wow, it's like, okay, when I do that, that happens. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm in. Like that.
I would agree 100% on that. 100%. You know, you've been doing it a long time, and yeah, it's. I love these conversations with coaches because we see eye to eye, and we're in the same business, so we understand humans, the conditions, the golf swings, the course, and always a fun time to really just dive into this and be authentic with it.
Well, James, you're doing great out there. You're making a difference. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. I know you're a busy guy, but this was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, an honor and a privilege. Thank you for all you're doing. I hope to get a little closer, and anytime we can bounce ideas off each other, let's do it. Let's grow this game. I love what you're doing out there, Travis.
All right, man. James Jordan, check him out at James Jordan Golf. Instagram. You got a website too, right?
Yeah, jamesjordangolf.com.
Perfect. All right, James. Have a good day, man. Appreciate your time.
Have a beautiful day, Travis. Thank you again.